which means that niceness is prideful. If you are trying to save face, it is prideful.
The desire for a God who is a comfortable God.
Mm-hmm. Teddy bear Jesus.
Yes. Someone that doesn't ask you to do anything.
And this is a complete switching, an upside down of reality and truth.
Yes.
Even in the religious realm.
Mm-hmm. I know that the doctrine says this, but that's not very nice. It doesn't feel good. So I want a God, I'm going to worship a God who is nice to me and doesn't require much.
Many of the antichrists throughout Scripture, they catch people with flattering words. If you're just saying yes to everything that comes along, and really out of niceness, you are going to hinder your family life and your progression through life in government. You've got a couple of real fiscal conservatives, and they're like, guys, if we don't get our finances under control, we're not going to be around. We're just all going to it's going to be destroyed, which is really not too different from the messages from the prophets, right? It's like, if you don't follow these good principles, you're going to be destroyed.
Someone that comes in and says the truth, that gives you a dose of reality and says, no, actually, this is what you should be doing. Because you like the niceness of that one, it almost forces you to say the person that's saying the truth is wrong because they're not being nice to me, right? I can't accept that truth because it's not in my reality.
They're not giving it in a Christ-like way. Therefore, they must not be Christ-like.
Right, which is totally not Christ-like in and of itself.
Exactly.
Right?
So really, we're living in a fake reality when we live in niceness culture.
Yeah.
And we get so ingrained into that alternate reality, generation after generation after generation, that we think it's real, but it's not.
And then when you get hit with reality, then your world is turned upside down, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not comfortable, right?
No,
it doesn't feel good.
It does not feel good.
That's not very nice. But that's the point, right?
Yeah. You got to cut some of the fat.
Yeah, bring a little shot of Ozempic and cut loose the fat.
Uh-oh, we're not going down that road now, are we? Don't be nice.
Don't be nice.
Have you ever heard of vitamin N?
No.
Yeah, so vitamin N is
this.
one of the most important vitamins that all children need. And it's...
Welcome to the No Bushel Podcast. We are your hosts, Big Ben. I'm Kendell, the Burning Bushman.
And today we're going to be talking about niceness culture, how it's really a part of Babylon.
Let's jump into it. Like and subscribe before we get too far into this, and share it with your friends and family. We hope to spread the message and light some fires. Let's just jump into it.
Yeah, perfect. So this is a funny subject because last time we talked about Babylon, we talked about the confusion of the languages specifically. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that has been confused today, where good has been called evil and evil has been called good, I think is being nice. Now, you might say that's silly or stupid. We all use the term nice. And I think in general, we have a nice, see, I just use it. We have a nice concept of it, or a decent concept of it. However, most of us would say, well, kindness and niceness are the same thing. And if you actually look at the roots of those words, they're very, very different. And I think it's important that we recognize that difference and we stop using the word nice. But the connotation that nice has, I think a lot of people think is good.
Yeah.
Agreeableness, right? Maybe patience, or there are some good aspects to nice. So how are we defining this? Why is nice not good?
Right. I think a little bit of it comes into the desire to have peace. And we've talked a lot about the world being a place where we don't want to offend and we don't want to be offended. And if we can bring peace into this scenario, then, and again, this is a shift in what we see as peace. Just because there's no confrontation, is that peace? Because, we're not fighting. So I think really it comes, you mentioned agreeableness, being able to just say, you know what, I don't want to make a big scene of anything. We're just going to make peace with each other. We're going to be agreeable, even though I don't necessarily agree with you or feel as strongly as you about a certain point, right? So why is it bad? Why do we say being nice is the wrong thing to do, right? We've already highlighted those in just the two sentences that we've shared, is that being nice is an avoidance, in my opinion, of truth. To be nice is an avoidance of a standing up for your moral convictions.
It's a lack of courage.
Yeah,
in many respects.
It's almost a fear. It can be a fear. Now, I mean, I can be nice to you, and we can say nice things, but what's the meaning and the purpose behind those nice things, right?
I've tried to get my kids to use the term kind more than nice. Every time I hear the word nice now, and I think I first heard this concept on the Quick Show. Greg Mattson does a great discussion about this, and it really hit me that so saving face. We don't want to create conflict. Conflict, we're told, is of the devil. I know that there's a scripture that says that, but I disagree because I think we misinterpret the scripture. The scripture says the spirit of contention is of the devil, and niceness has been put on a pedestal. There's several virtues like this. Okay, so there are true Christ-centered virtues, and then there are like these secondary virtues that the world in Babylon tries to put in the place of these Christ-like attributes. So we put niceness instead of kindness. And it's related to the peace aspect that you talked about.
Right.
Another one that you could consider in this vein would be politeness, right? So
yes, very much so.
I mean, like, who doesn't want to be polite? I mean, like, we're told it's this ultimate virtue. You have to be polite, and yet it's being nice in many respects too. And let's go to the root of the word. Kind, what does that start with? A K-I-N.
And kin.
And the root is kin, meaning family, and it's how we interact with family, right? So when we interact with family, there's, yes, we are cordial and we're helpful and we're growth-minded, but do families have conflict? Absolutely.
All the time.
And we have, as a parent, like if I'm with my kids, and something, there's a communication breakdown somewhere and things aren't happening, like you got to address it and you have to bring it up. And if you don't, then
it's going to keep happening.
It's going to keep happening, and your children are never going to grow. If you just live and let live as a parent, like that's like the worst counsel you could ever give.
Right. Either it's just going to continue happening, or whatever happened, the consequence of those actions are going to fester and become a real problem. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So continue with your train of thought, though, as far as the root of those words and where you're getting at.
Yeah, just that. So nice comes from a different background, the etymology of it, and it actually means almost the exact opposite of how we use it now. But it came from a kind of saving face type of mentality, and even like what we said, a lack of courage, a lack of growth, a lack of confrontation. And so in our culture, niceness has taken over completely.
Yeah.
We don't want to have hard conversations. I was thinking of this from a community standpoint. So I was talking with some people at church recently, and when we go to church, have you ever had somebody else's kids do something and you're like, I wouldn't let my kids do that. I don't know if their parents would let them do that, but probably not. But it's not my kid, so I'm just not going to say anything about it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? As a culture and a society, it used to be that cultures and people and your friends and people would help raise your kids. And in large part, we've kind of gone away from that, where it's like, oh, you do your thing.
It's not my problem.
It's not my problem.
Yeah.
And whatever, as long as you're not killing each other, like, I'll tell your mom later if I need to, and she can deal with it.
To a certain extent, I would argue that part of the reason behind that is, and this niceness culture that we're talking about is part of this, but I think part of the reason that it is there's a lack of consistency in our communal moral values, and
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we have the same values at one particular church event, right? We're all the same church. We believe the same moral and doctrines, but you go outside of that one church building, and you go to the public library, for instance, or the pool, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's quite a wide range of values.
There's no more shared values anymore.
Yeah, we have a lot fewer shared values, and so what you might see as a bad thing that my kid's doing, I might say, that's totally fine. Go for it. And we don't. There's a confusion, if you will, of am I on the same page as the parents? Are we on opposite ends of the spectrum? I think a lot of it comes down to that lack of shared values.
Which is a lack of unity. So this kind of gets into the diversity, right? So diversity, all the time we hear in society, diversity is a good thing. It's an awesome thing. We want all the diversity in the world. And we do like diversity of thought. Diversity of race really shouldn't matter.
In God's eyes, it doesn't, right?
We are one race. Diversity, I mean, you can say that, and I think maybe what people are trying to say is that, well, a different race has a different background, so that does bring diversity of thought. It's like, well, if it actually brings diversity of thought, then that's fine. Sure. But you don't necessarily want diversity of sin either, right? Like this is diversity of good moral standing.
Yeah.
And niceness makes it very easy for negative things to be introduced to a society.
Yes.
And as more, so we're generationally nice now. We've had one generation and then another generation, such that because we're all so nice, it leads to loneliness. Okay, let me explain this, because I think people don't naturally go from
connect the dots on
nice
a couple of these.
Right? So when we try to save face, we don't actually say what we mean. We are self-suppressing our thought and our speech. We talk about freedom of speech, but if we're too nice that we don't want to actually rustle any feathers anywhere, we don't want to offend anybody, then we are self-censoring and we're not giving our true self. Have you ever known somebody? So this happens all the time, actually, at church. And I would say our church is one of the worst for this. I hate to say it, but I think we are. You go to church, you can have a dozen conversations, and you can know people that you've known for years, but you actually have no idea who they are.
Sure.
Because they've never been willing to show you who they are. Because they're just being nice.
Yeah.
And well, you could say, oh, well, that's who they are. They're just a nice person. It's like, no, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, what do they actually think about things? What do they actually, inside of their brain? I know they're nice and they're cordial, and that's great. So like we can hang out and do something, but like at a deeper level, to really have deep friendships and connection and meaning in life with someone else, yes, there's shared experience, but there's also shared morals and shared values and shared experiences. And sometimes people will share things like, you can get to know someone so much faster when they are very willing to share who they are.
And one of the things that allows us to get to know people is having conversations with those people. And how many conversations do we have on a daily basis that are just superficial, right? Hey, how's it going?
How's the weather?
Good is what. Yeah, exactly.
Game last week was good.
Just very superficial. I'm just saying this so that I can be nice to you, right? So I can just get past this 30-second interaction that I'm going to have with you in the hallway. And when we get past that superficial level of a conversation, and we have a deep conversation with each other where we get to know each other and our opinions and thoughts, that's when we can make those real connections. I mean, you think of anybody in your life that you have a legitimate, deep relationship with, those are people that you can trust to share their actual feelings with, right?
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to the niceness culture as far as we do not want conversation. We do not like having to debate ideas and difference of thought because it's not nice. It's not something that's comfortable. That's one thing that I think of it as the opposite of niceness is it's not comfortable, right? We're trying to be comfortable as much as possible. So I'd rather talk about the weather because everybody could talk about the weather and it's the same no matter what, you know. But what did you think about X, Y, and Z that happened yesterday, and how does that affect your life? And you know what different things are going on at home with your kids, and that's when you start getting to know people and how things are changing in their life and their values and viewpoints. That's when relationships build. But you mentioned the loneliness. We are such a lonely people now. Again, we've talked a lot about anxiety and depression and just a mental health crisis that our country and the world is living through right now. That I think is directly tied to a need, a burning desire to be nice that forces us to say how the weather's going and then just withdraw. And I'm not going to interact with anybody else because it's uncomfortable to be around somebody else.
Niceness is really viewed as righteousness. And because of that flipping, people who really are striving to be righteous and striving even in church and like wanting to do what's right, they are falling into niceness out of a desire to be righteous, but then they get depressed and lonely and anxious and sad, and they wonder why I'm trying to do everything right, but it's just this simple thing. They don't have a proper understanding of the true principle of kindness and how that's different. It's one of the reasons that podcasting has become so big. So we're more connected than ever, right? But think everybody has their friend online, right?
Right.
And why are they your friend? Why do you feel like so close to some of these podcasters that you listen to? Because you feel like you know them. Yeah. You've heard all of their opinions and they've come out and man, they're bold and they say something and you're like,
I can connect with you.
I can connect with that. Like that's good. Except there's only one way. They have no outlet for it to share it with somebody else.
Yeah.
And so it leads to loneliness because even though they do have a connection to that person, it's a one-sided connection.
Right.
And not a dual connection.
I do think that in the world of podcasts and this new sense of media, there are lots of benefits because of, I think and this is one of the goals of our podcast is to help encourage people to speak out and not be afraid to have those conversations. As much as you and I are very similar in our thoughts, and there are going to be things that we will have differences of opinion and maybe disagree on certain things, but the fact that we can sit down and have this conversation and just be willing to open up and learn with each other and in some situations debate allows us to have a deeper connection rather than just friendly coworkers that see each other once a day in the office.
Yeah. And I like to think back to like historical examples of people that have been through really hard things and how they stood up courageously and how I can stand up courageously and be like that. But then, so Nazi Germany, right? We know a lot about the time period and we know all the horrible things that took place. And one of the most mind-blowing things to me, I would like to think that I was one of the people that really stood up and helped protect the Jews and, did all these things. But the number within the population who just stood by and watched and didn't do anything and probably thought they were being nice. You know what I mean? I mean, like they were not rustling any feathers. They didn't, maybe they were afraid of what the government would do to them, and maybe that's why they didn't. But maybe also they cared more about what the people in their party thought than what was actually happening to other people. And we do this all the time too. We get into our tribes tribalism is still,
it's a real thing,
heavy and strong.
Yeah.
And you get online and you see these, pick your thing. Diet's a big one, right? It's like you've got your carnivores and you've got your vegetarians and your vegans and and like they get into their tribe, and then everything outside of the tribe, as long as you're nice within the tribe. So Democrats and Republicans, this is a good one too, right? So everyone falls in line to their tribe, and it's okay if they're not nice to the other side, but within their own ranks, they've got to be nice. They got to save face. They got to do everything right. And so it turns niceness into something that you do with those that mean something to you, but not with those that aren't important to you.
One of the things that I really bothers me with this particular subject is when you are nice and do not stand up for yourself, do not stand up for what you actually think or share what you actually think, it allows room for the opposition to take over, right? So you can think of this in a religious sense or a political sense. You mentioned Democrats and Republicans, or diets, whatever the topic is. By being nice, that it allows the darkness to creep in. And what I mean by that is when I am just agreeable to whatever you say, then you can take advantage of that, right? You can say, well, I'm going to XYZ, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And even though I don't agree with that, or I don't feel strongly about that, I don't want to offend you, or I don't want to make a big deal about it. So I'm just going to kind of make you feel good about it. But then the next person that comes in can say the same thing that you did. And then all of a sudden your side is growing and growing and growing, right? This darkness, this bad side of a viewpoint that I totally disagree with, but because I'm not willing to stand up and say, wait a second, this is wrong. Let's talk about it and let's figure out what's better. Because I'm not willing to do that, your viewpoint grows and grows and grows, and mine's just me, little old me sitting here, hiding away in the shadows because I'm not willing or not courageous enough to stand up and say what I believe in. But if you speak out, then that opposing viewpoint has opposition. And that's where you can actually make a difference in the world, in your life, in your family, your community.
It kind of reminds me of how negative information is relayed a whole lot faster than positive information, right?
100%.
Yeah. So generationally, we're at a catch-22 because niceness culture has led to a lot of loneliness.
Yep.
I think it's also led to conflict resolution. That's what I was looking for. Sorry. Okay. So first, loneliness. Second, a lack of conflict resolution, where because no one has had to resolve conflict because we're just not bringing up conflict in healthy ways, then generationally, we now have several generations who never grew up with any type of conflict resolution. And now at church, so I've been trying to advocate for less niceness culture, to really speak our minds, to be content communication, and to be open to oppose or think differently than other people, because I think it leads to better belonging. So there's less loneliness. But what often happens is that we don't have the tools to deal with the conflict, and so then it actually, people bring up their things, but then feelings are hurt, and then someone has to pick up the pieces.
Yep.
So how, that's what I've been racking my brain around, is like, how do we get through this catch-22 of, in order to get to belonging, we have to be willing to state our opinions and our views and our thoughts. But then when we do, people's feelings are hurt. And it's not like we're trying to hurt feelings. Like, we just want to have an honest discussion, and we try to come at it from a nice, I use the word nice, right? We try to come at it from a kind perspective.
Yeah.
But people don't have the tools to be able to deal with that conflict.
We don't know how to deal with conflict, but when conflict comes, because we don't know how to deal with it, it wrecks us, right?
Yeah.
That is an issue that we're going to have to, I think it's going to have to be, you just have to, I mean, for lack of a better phrase, just have to deal with it, right? Like
toughen up and get some thick skin.
The more that you expose yourself to that conflict, the easier it will become to deal with those situations.
And as parents, I know there are things that I've noticed in myself sometimes, things that I don't deal with or things that my wife doesn't deal with well. And these are things that we should help our children deal with better.
Yeah.
Because when they're young, they're much more moldable. My sister-in-law, I should say our sister-in-law, just a funny experience that I had. And this was when she was like a senior in high school, I think. And her dad he has a truck and he parks it out in front of the house. And I borrow the truck periodically. And so I had borrowed it. I went and I parked it back in their driveway. And he had asked his daughter to run outside and just let me know that there's a specific place he likes it parked and a specific way he likes it parked. No big deal. Like, if I'm going to borrow his truck, I want to put it back where he wants me to put it back. But she was so afraid and like so scared to come out.
I had not heard that story before.
Yeah. So she like kind of pushed back on her dad. Was like, I don't want to do that. That's not very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that just seems kind of mean. I was like, that seems mean?
Right.
How does that seem mean? Like,
it shouldn't.
You just gotta go tell him where the car goes. You know, like, it's a simple thing, and yet, even as a senior in high school, and everyone's going to get to a different point. I will say she's gotten a lot better at that type of conflict.
Yeah.
But I've seen that in my wife as well.
Mm-hmm.
My wife had a kind of a similar temperament, and conflict is really hard for her. And so even within our marriage, like, that's something that we've worked on to get a little bit more thick skin, because if I can't say something because I know it's going to hurt you, well, then we're going to lack communication.
Yeah.
And
we're probably going to end up hurting each other even more because we're not willing to speak our mind and overcome that conflict that we know is there, but we don't want to touch it. Right.
When you were a missionary, did you have, what was the name of every week we were supposed to have a meeting?
Oh, companionship study or
companionship inventory.
Comp inventory. Yeah.
Comp inventory. Yes.
Yes.
So, and it was like spelled out in the handbook. It's
exactly
like
how to do it.
You have to sit down. You have to tell each other any issues you're having with the other person, whatnot. Right.
It was horrible to go through. I hated it. I don't know anybody that loved doing it. Right.
Nobody likes that.
Nobody likes to sit down and say, this is what I think you're doing bad, and tell me what I'm doing wrong, right? But when we did it was amazing how we could resolve those issues. I will say, as uncomfortable as it was as a missionary, when my wife and I were dating and when we first got married, we implemented this concept into our relationship. And number one, anything that we had that was, if I was doing something that bothered her or vice versa, we were totally comfortable bringing it up and saying, this needs to change in order for us to have a healthy relationship. And because we knew that was the moment, that was the time frame we had allotted to have this conversation, it was easy for us to say, I can't be offended by this because I am actively participating in this conversation that is designed to overcome that conflict, right? But also, I can to attest to what you shared earlier about the building of relationships. We would not have the strength of a relationship that we have now if we had not been going through that process. And because we were able to say, this is why I don't think this is right, or this is, you said that thing, and it's really bothered me. And she'd be like, "Oh, why does that bother you?" And then we have a conversation about it. Or usually it was things that I was doing wrong that needed to be fixed that she was pointing out to me. But
it allows for self-assessment too. Yeah, and this is the trick, is that we have to be humble.
Yep.
And humility is courageous.
Mm.
And pride is the opposite. And that is not courageous.
Yeah.
Pride is trying to save face, which means that niceness is prideful. If you are trying to save
like
face,
that.
It is prideful. And humility comes from an inner place, and that's hard, but you just have to be able to willingly say, in a relationship like that with a spouse or a child, and say, I honestly want to know, where am I messing up?
Yeah.
Like, it might hurt me, and that's okay, because I'm a child of God, and I'm going to grow, and I'm going to learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
But when your identity is tied to what you can or can't do, and it's just all about you, or your confidence is not in God, but in your own ability, and then someone tells you, oh, you messed up here, or you need to be better at this, or you need to do that, then it hurts more. And that's where humility can only come when we're truly linked and connected to a godly view of who we are.
Yeah, for sure. A thought on this specifically is, just as you were talking, it kind of made me think about how this particular viewpoint or vantage point we're talking about is when we ask someone else for input. And that is easier in my mind to ask someone for input rather than telling somebody else that they're wrong or that what they're doing is bad. Because if I'm asking for it, then I am forcing myself to accept whatever that information is, rather than someone says something that I disagree with and I say, oh, no, that's not the way it is. Let me tell you what's actually right. There's two different ways to go about that.
One, you're humbly approaching from the beginning.
Yeah.
The other one, it catches you midlife,
in the act, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you haven't thought it through, and you haven't. And so that's where sometimes you just have to take time.
Sure.
And, we can get angry. And sometimes, it's like the classic rule, like, take, whether it's 10 seconds or 10 minutes, and just go cool off and figure it out. The marriage advice to never go to sleep angry with your spouse, which is really probably terrible counsel, because sometimes you just need to sleep on it before you can be at the right mindset to
or it makes for a sleepless night.
It does, but it helps humble you.
Yeah, for sure. So I think maybe I'd like to talk about just a couple of examples in today's society of where this niceness culture is really affecting us as a society. And a lot of it starts with the family, in my opinion. You mentioned parents being nice to their children and not being willing to say, no, son, or no, daughter, that's not how we do it. This is not correct. Let me teach you the proper way. One of the biggest things that comes to mind that I've just been thinking about a lot recently is the issue with gender, whether it's the trans movement or gays and lesbians, the LGBTQ community, right? And the culture we have is, let's be nice and say, live and let live. Mm-hmm. It's okay. You do you. But I'm not going to stand up for what I actually believe and say, no, that's not right. And one of the issues we have with children is our parents are not willing to tell their kids, no, you are not the opposite sex than what you were born. You are in fact a boy or a girl, whatever the case is. And that being nice to your kids rather than being a good parent, teaching them what's truth, only furthers the problems and the conflict that they're going to receive later on down the road.
But Kendell, it feels so much better to say yes. When your kid comes to you and they give you those nice eyes, and their big, beautiful blue eyes are blinking up at you, and they say, "Can I please have this piece of candy, Dad?" And you say, oh, honey, of course you can have that piece of candy because it's going to make you so happy.
And then you turn around to your wife and you say, dang it, she got me again, right? Like, and then you have that conversation, right, with your spouse, who you can have those deep conversations. Say, I really got to stop letting them get candy from me every time I want candy.
Have you ever heard of vitamin N?
No.
Yeah, so vitamin N is one of the most important vitamins that all children need. And it's no. Say no.
I like it.
Vitamin N.
I like it.
So children need to be told no, but not just that. I think we also live in a culture of societally, you get asked to do something, whether it be a church or whether it be in the community soccer league or this or that. And like, we like to be able to say yes to things. We like to be able to participate in things, and we end up overstretching ourselves a little bit. And it really, I think in large part, it's because we feel like no is conflict. And we need to realize that every time that you say yes to something, you actually are saying no to something else. And vice versa. Every time that you say no to something, you are saying yes to something else. And if you don't prioritize, if you're just saying yes to everything that comes along, and really out of niceness, you are going to hinder your family life and your progression through life, because you're not going to be focusing on those things that are most important. We only have so much time in a day. We can't do everything. And if you don't prioritize the best things in life, then you're going to fail.
Yeah, for sure. From a religious standpoint, one of the things that I have realized recently, and I don't know that this is necessarily new. I think it's been something that throughout history people have wanted, but is the desire for a God who is a comfortable God.
Teddy bear Jesus.
Yes. Someone that doesn't ask you to do anything, but just is there to help you feel good.
And this is a complete switching, an upside down of reality and truth.
Yes.
Even in the religious realm. Yeah.
Where I know that the doctrine says this, but that's not very nice. It doesn't feel good. So I want a God, I'm going to worship a God who is nice to me and doesn't require much. But rather than what does God actually teach? And in fact, going through God's true doctrine gives me the peace that I've been searching for.
Many of the antichrists throughout Scripture, they catch people with flattering words. And have you ever thought about that? Like, what are flattering words? Like, what is it that they're doing? And in many cases, it's like politically, they're speaking from the community leadership, if you will. And it's like, oh, well, you can have this, and we should support our leaders, and we should do these things, and we'll give you money, and you give us your taxes, but then we'll allocate it and give you all of this stuff. It's really no different than today.
Yeah.
And people are flattered, and that then makes them want more of that. I think,
they feel good about whatever is being told to them, so they're more willing to look away from the things that are not good about whatever that individual is teaching or preaching, right?
And we think we're just being nice by flattering them away, and then when somebody does call them out and say, actually, so case in point, like in government, you've got a couple. There's really just a handful of them. Couple of like real fiscal conservatives. And they're like, guys, if we don't get our finances under control in the US, we're not going to be around. Like, we're just all going to, it's going to be destroyed, which is really not too different from the messages from the prophets, right? It's like, if you don't follow these good principles, you're going to be destroyed. Right. So someone else is going to take over. Like it's not that different, but we like being flattered. We like being told nice things about us. We like not dealing with the hardships of reality.
Yep.
And so really we're living in a fake reality when we live in niceness culture. It's an alternate reality.
Yeah.
And we get so ingrained into that alternate reality, generation after generation after generation, that we think it's real, but it's not.
And then when you get hit with reality, then your world is turned upside down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you look at leadership. We can talk about politics again, or church leaders. When you have someone that's flattering you, making you feel good about whatever they're saying, and you start to look past any of their, the negative side of their viewpoint or history, then that person's opposition, someone that comes in and says the truth, that gives you a dose of reality and says, no, actually, this is what you should be doing, because you like the niceness of that one individual, it almost forces you to say that the person that's saying the truth is wrong because they're not being nice to me, right? I can't accept that truth because it's not in my reality.
They're not giving it in a Christ-like way. Therefore, they must not be Christ-like.
Right. Which is totally not Christ-like in and of itself.
Exactly.
Right?
So pride cycle,
Mm-hmm.
relating this to pride cycle. So we know that when we live righteously, God blesses us, things go well. Think of this as like the United States of America, right? Like early country, religious people, the Pilgrims people, like wanted to build up this great nation. And then we start having lots of success and life gets easier. And over generation, we get a lot of niceness culture because life is comfortable. We we just want to hear good things. You don't really have to work hard for things because it's given to you, and you get the flattering words from the politics and all that. And then the pride cycle, at some point, there is a fall.
Right.
That our sin leads to a fall. And that's where niceness cultures become so normalized and such a part of society, and it's actually viewed as good, that we should save face. We shouldn't speak out. We shouldn't speak truth because it might hurt someone's feelings. And we have completely flipped it upside down, said that this is religious. This is what Christ would do. This is a teddy bear Jesus. And that is so inverted from the reality and the truth that niceness culture is, in large part, what leads to the destruction and the fall in the pride cycle.
One of the things that Christ said himself was, I am not here to bring peace. I'm here to bring the sword, right? And niceness to me is we're trying to have this peace between the two of us. Whether or not that's a real peace or not, I want to feel this peace. But that's not what Christ came to the earth for. He came with the sword to call us all to repentance, right? And there's a difference between the sorrow that we have as penitent people that are recognizing sin and are sorrowful because we are sinning and are repenting. There's a sorrow that comes, a godly sorrow that comes from change, right? That comes from improving oneself and repenting and taking Christ's yoke upon you, versus the sorrow of people that it is hard to hear God's word, and they feel sadness because God's word is not in line with what they want, right? They are sad because their sins are sins, and God's not going to change that and allow them to be happy in their sins, right?
Which all goes back to pride. And in the Christian faith, the concept of having a broken heart and a contrite spirit. Sometimes our heart does have to just get broken, totally twisted apart, because our pride can lead us to bitterness, or it can, when our heart is broken, if we allow our heart to get broken, then it can lead us to be more contrite and have godly sorrow, as opposed to the sorrowing of the damned.
But that's not comfortable, right?
No,
it doesn't feel good.
It does not feel good.
That's not very nice. That's the point, right?
Exactly.
Is letting go of oneself and having that focus of God, your higher power, right? And whether or not the people listening, our audience listening is Christian or not, if you have a higher power that you believe in, then that typically is driving you to become a better person, right? Rather than just trying to promote oneself, but promoting, that higher power, which we believe to be Christ and our Father in heaven. And if I focus on Him, then I think I'm going to be all right.
And obviously there's a balance, because if we go too far on the other side, then we can have the spirit of contention.
Right.
Vindictive, angry at the other people, not see the other people as people. And that's not what we're saying. When we say approach conflict, it means in a Christ-like way. That Christ, I mean, there's a reason Christ was crucified. And it wasn't because he was liked.
Yeah, he was not nice to everybody.
And we need to be okay with not being liked. That's a hard thing. Nobody doesn't like to be liked. So this
in
is
a world where we all want to have a like on Facebook, right? Yeah,
I have to admit. So I currently serve as a bishop of my congregation, and one of the things that I was most fearful about was I've had so many experiences prior to being a bishop of dealing with people who had left the church or were mad at the church for different things, and it always came back to a bishop who had mistreated them or done something that offended them in some way. And I knew instantly when I got the call as a bishop that I'm going to offend people. And it's not that I want to offend people, but it's just part of life. And when you're in a position of responsibility over other people, there's really no way around it. And that's something that we have to accept in life. And we just have to do the best that we can. And we have to look to God and take our confidence from Him rather than taking our confidence from other people. This was one of the things that really struck me recently, me and my wife, watching. So Trump, for however you view him, you like him, you hate him, I don't really care. I've gone in waves with Trump. There have been times that I've loved him. There have been times that I've hated him, right? Okay. So that being said, we watched him speak recently, and I do get the sense that I feel like he's changed quite a bit in the last little while, particularly after the assassination attempt. I feel like his temperament has changed quite a bit. But he was speaking, and my wife and I, and we just both kind of spontaneously started laughing with the same thought. And that was, I can't believe he is so willing to say what he's saying right now, because I would just be so uncomfortable saying that, because I would worry about people would think about me. But he just does not care at all what anybody thinks of him. And in that moment, regardless of the actual things that he was saying, whether I agreed with those or not, in that moment, I admired that. It was like, wow, I wish that I could really say what I mean and mean what I say. And not that I want to do it vindictively or in a way to purposely offend people. That's not the point. But I do want to be able to be kind by speaking truth.
I think there's a generation of a generational gap. You've mentioned that a couple times, that by generation it adds up on each other. But I think of all the old guys that I interact with, and Trump's an old guy. He's, what is he, in his 70s?
Almost 80 now.
Almost 80 now. But I think of all the old men that I interact with, whether it's at church or work, and it's the old guys that just don't care what they say, right? They're just going to let it go. And a number of times I've been around where somebody else next to me is like, I can't believe he just said that, or whatever it is. And I've learned to just it is what it is. He's just going to say what he is. And sometimes the things that they say, I'm like, that made me feel a little uncomfortable, or that didn't seem very appropriate. And
we're not saying it's always right.
Yeah, exactly. but there's a respect for people that are willing to say what they feel and just, not hold anything back.
And going back to kind of where we started with loneliness and a sense of belonging. When you speak your mind, it is true. You kind of cut through the fat.
Yeah.
And some relationships might get cut. You're going to have less relationships overall, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. However, the few that you do have are going to be people that align with you and like to be around someone like you. And there's no like wishy-washiness, and it's just like you get who you get, and you can connect at a much deeper level because of that. And we need to be okay with not being buddy with everybody. Like that's natural and normal. And if you really want to have good, strong core relationships where you can be self-fulfilled in those relationships, you got to cut some of the fat.
Yeah, bring a little shot of Ozempic and cut loose the fat.
Uh-oh, we're not going down that road now, are we?
But you're totally right? It's getting to the meat of the relationship, the conversation, the debate, whatever part of we're talking about, getting to the nitty gritty, and living life to its fullest. Right, life is meant to be enjoyed, and we're meant to learn and develop, and no one's going to do that if you just sit back and let life roll over you.
So with things like social media, we have so many friends, and there's actually been research done on how many friends you can actually maintain, like at any given time.
Like real friends, or you?
Yeah. Well, there comes a point that we kind of get into more of a tribalistic mindset if you have too many friends, and the fewer friends that you have, that you can, it just leads to better outcomes. Overall.
Okay.
But so online we have lots of friends. But it kind of reminds me, you remember the old object lesson where you have a glass, and it's used in a totally different context, but I just want to kind of share it here, where you have so many rocks and so many little pebbles, and you want to fit them all into the cup, and if you put all the little stuff in first, and then you put the big stuff in, it won't all fit, right? You got to figure out, how do you fit all these things in? So it's like a time management thing. It's like well, you learn, you put the big rocks in first, and then the little ones can kind of pile around behind that. But if you take that one step further, okay, so that's a good principle. Like you got to have prioritize your core things, which you could relate that to your core friendships, right? If we try to facilitate too many friendships, you're going to feel lonely.
Yeah,
because you just need to focus in on
you're stretching yourself a little thin there
on a few things. On the flip side, so if instead of just big rocks and sand, because the core things, you want to be able to see the core things. But then if you got big rocks, medium-sized rocks, but then you get sand, and you pour sand in the top of that, right? And you fill it all the way up with sand. Well, can you actually see any of the big rocks?
I see what you're saying.
When you fill it with sand, all you can see is sand. And so often in our lives, we're trying to do too many things, and it's part of saving face. I think we just we want to go along to get along, and we want to be like, it's out of a good. It's often a good motivation in the first place. Like we want to be out there and do things, but it's just a misapplication. We're not rooted in the proper principles, and we're trying to be more nice than we are kind to those that matter most, focusing in on the big, our families. And outside of that, I mean, like, sure, you're going to have some close relationships. You want to have a couple of close relationships. But if you fill it too much with the house the weather people, or the online, you start scrolling and you want to keep up on everybody that you've ever known that has moved 20 hours away, and you're never going to see the rest of your life. But you still want to know about them.
Yeah.
Well, if you spend too much time trying to keep too many connections, it's gonna reduce.
It takes away the
current connection time.
I like that analogy. That's a good analogy. Any other thoughts on?
Don't be nice.
Don't be nice.
Should we make a bumper sticker? Don't be nice, get hate. Don't be nice, be hated.
Be hated. I like that. We should make a bumper sticker. We're gonna have to make a bumper sticker and then put a link to order that on our channel here. Don't be nice, be hated.
At least by a few people.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to be hated.
That's better. It's not that we want to be hated. I don't want to come across too hard on this, but there's this semblance of truth there, right? I mean, it's not everybody's going to like you, and we got to be okay with that.
Yep. and that's not what matters in life, right? Mm-hmm. Being liked is not what matters. Yeah. Those key relationships are what matters.
I had somebody, it actually meant a lot to me. So just maybe in closing, I had, there's a phrase in scripture in reference to the priesthood that we're supposed to use our priesthood righteously and seeking God's will and doing these things. There's something called unrighteous dominion, where a priesthood holder doesn't do things in a godly way, but actually uses his priesthood authority in a personal, selfish way, and uses that to cause other people to do things for their own benefit, not for the glory of God.
A parallel of that would be toxic masculinity.
Yeah, right. So there was a time in my life when somebody who was actually a pretty close friend of mine told me that he thought I was exercising unrighteous dominion. And it totally came from like nowhere. I was like, it just blindsided me. It was like, wait, what? But he genuinely like felt like I was abusing the power that I had. And because he was a friend, we could talk about it.
Yeah.
We could hash it out. And I am actually really grateful now that he was willing to state that. Now, I have to admit, like, there was a period of time there where it got kind of awkward because it was like, it didn't help that he, it was very awkward circumstances. He had tried to tell me individually, but then ended up going to a leader above me to tell them about it. And so there was kind of like this three-way triangle, and then that leader talked to me about it. And then when that leader talked to me about it, I was like, well, let me talk to the guy. I'm like, we're friends. Like, we should just be able to talk about it. And so we did. And so the nice saving face thing, when I had heard about that through the grapevine, through the other leader that he had told, would have been just to like not, just let it slide.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. I'm just going to not bring any more conflict. It's going to be awkward for him. It's going to be awkward for me. And that is the worst possible thing that could have been done. Instead, it's like, hey, I called him up and said, come in. I'd like to talk about this because I'm just curious what you actually mean and how, what's wrong here. And we were friends. And so after that conversation, and we were like brutally honest with each other. And, my pride was hurt for a few days, but in the longer term felt so much better because we were able to have that hard conversation, and we were kind and civil during it, but it was still a hard conversation. And I'm grateful for that conversation because it taught me that people don't see things as I see them. And so it gave me a greater perspective in life. And, I'm grateful for that hard experience. And that's all we're trying to share here today, is that we hope that you have experiences that are hard so that you are grateful for them in the future, and you learn to be more resilient. You have better friendships. You're less lonely, and you thwart Babylon so that we don't get destroyed. How's that for anything?
I love it. Like and subscribe if you want to join our anti-niceness culture and want to be a little less nice and maybe a little bit more hated, I guess. Yep. But we hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll see y'all next week.